Have you ever read a book and it was so good that it just inspired you to such an extent that you had to go out and try it yourself? Well, that's my experience with this. It's written by Mark White. It's titled Super Insulated Truss Frame House Construction. Written in 1984. I first read this book about 10 years ago, and I was so inspired by it that I really wanted to try it for myself. Right now, I'm building an off-grid cabin, and I thought it would be the perfect excuse to try using some of the methods described in this book. So here we go. Hi everyone, I'm David. Welcome to my channel where I am currently building an off-grid cabin, which will be fully self-sufficient as far as heating and cooling and its own power and its own insulation. Now, I'm at the point where I need to build the walls and the rafters. I need to do the rough framing. And I'm inspired by this book here to do that. In the past, I have built my house and I built my garage, and I have plenty of videos on those on my channel. And when I built those two structures, I used the platform method of stick framing. Platform method is where you build the entire first floor assembly. So all the joists and the subfloor down. And then on top of the subfloor, you build the stud walls and you tip the stud walls upright. And then up on top of the walls, you build the rafters one stick at a time. And that method worked really well. But in this case, I'm going to try a different method. So this Super Insulated Truss Frame House Construction book, the author Mark White, he describes a method where you assemble the studs, the rafters, and the ceiling joists, and you assemble those together on the flat as one assembly, as a giant truss, and then you tip the whole assembly upright. Well, I want to try that. I'm inspired by it. Now, I'm not following his book exactly to the letter. There are a couple of things that I'm changing, but that's the inspiration. Now, there's two main reasons that I want to try it, and one is rain, and the second is safety. Now, first with rain. I'm kind of building this off-grid cabin in my spare time, so it's going to take a lot of months to build this, and I'm going to have a lot of rain in those months, and I don't want all that rain puddling on top of a subfloor, which would happen in platform method of framing. And I don't want the rain potentially getting trapped between an insulation product between the floor joists and the subfloor. So in this case, with a truss frame method as described in the book, all the rain can fall right through and the floor goes in last instead of first. So I like that. And second, as a DIYer, that's all I am. I'm not building, houses professionally. I don't have a lull or scaffolding or pump jacks. So I have to carry everything up on ladders. So I figure the more stuff that I can build on the ground, on the flat, and then tip up, that should be a little bit safer. So hopefully we find out whether or not that's the case. We're gonna build a big giant structure like this. Gonna have our beams, which are already in place. And then all the wood members are gonna be 2x8, which is gonna give us both the strength that we need, but also the gap for insulation. So when it comes to the bottom here, we're going to hold the bottom joist back 1.5 inches for a rim joist. Then up here, we're going to cut that one flat. We're going to have a cut piece there. The joist is going to have a straight 90-degree cut on both ends. The south wall is going to have a straight 90-degree cut on both ends. The north wall has a 90-degree cut on the bottom, and we're doing a 412 pitch here. So we need to angle this one at 412. Now, to put all this together, we're going to have gusset plates, which I think are going to be 14 by 5.5. So this distance here is going to be 7.25 inches. That distance is 1.5. So we should have 5.75 left over. and give ourselves a little 1/4 inch of play between the two. So we'll have an 1/8 inch there and an 1/8 inch at the front face. So we'll do these gusset plates at 14 inches by 5.5 inches, and we're just going to make all these gusset plates the same. Here's my first joist. This is the one that I picked out, and it's going on as my template. I already made a mark 1.5 inches in from each end because that's where the rim joist is going to go over here. So this is our template joist. It's going across and it's held back 1.5 inches. That's where the rim joist is going to go. Now this is going to be our stud for the south wall. It's going to sit on top of this joist. We'll have a gusset plate, and then it comes up. And then over here, I need to cut this. It's going to be a straight cut somewhere in this vicinity. And then we'll have another 2x at an angle and the rafter then going off at an angle over there. All right, let's talk about the gusset plates for the trusses. So I have this manual. It's from 1981 for Iowa State University. And in here, we can actually get some really great information about sizing trusses. So over here, we have our gusset information. So they say 3/8. I'm actually using 1/2 inch plywood, so I'm going a little bit more than that. Now let's talk about fastening. So we have construction adhesive, and then over here for nails, it says 5-penny or 6-penny box nails. I am doing that, so I'm using a 1 3/4 inch nail. It's galvanized and ring shank. So we're good on the nails, and then it over here it actually says to hit each nail with a hammer because the pneumatic nails go so fast that they don't allow enough time for the glue to spread in the joint. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to nail off the gusset plates really quick with the pneumatic nail gun, and then I go back and I hit each nail with a hammer, and you can actually see the glue spread out on the outside of the gusset plate after we hit it with the hammer. We completed 12 out of the 13 trusses. So we've done all the common ones in the middle, as well as one of the gable ends, the east gable end. Now we're gonna do the west gable end, but instead of setting it up over on the beams, we're gonna set it up on this stack because the gable ends only get a gusset plate on one side, since the other side they're gonna get sheathed with OSB. So we're gonna build it on the stack. Well, this is one of the special moments that I've really been looking forward to presenting and trying out in this video. We're going to do a step here where we're going to put some plywood down, which will help us later when we create our air barrier and insulation. But we're doing it before setting the frame on these beams. So I know that's odd and different, but I think it's going to really help us out. So in order to do that, we're going to do some calculations and measurements. I'm going to snap some chalk lines in order to establish a really good square. So in case the beams are just slightly out of square, we're going to we're going to correct for that. This 2x8 is exactly 12 feet long, and we've got 6 inches and 3/8. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in at the 9-inch mark, and that'll be a good established point. And now we're going to come in on the other side 9 inches as well. I know when I set that up, I made my chalk lines 9 inches in from the 12-foot edge. So I'm going to make another mark here 9 inches in. I grabbed a couple more 2x8s and just laid them down in between. They're not nailed off or anything. They're just temporary to hold the edge of the plywood. Once we have the trusses up, I can nail the plywood up to the trusses. So it's just very temporary that I need some support. Okay, so I have my line here where I snapped a chalk line, and I made that 9-inch in mark on the plywood. So now I can line those two up right on the very edge. So now they're lined up, and I'm going to nail this off. Then I'm going to come over to the other side, and we'll check that this is also lined up. So we got the piece of plywood fastened to the beam with just a couple of small nails. We're going to get all 4 in. There's going to be a gap in the middle of 4 feet, and that will be added later on. But this is establishing now an air barrier that is going to go continuous over the beam. We don't have to stop there, but it's also going to help us keep the critters out, because now we have no cracks between a sheathing and the beam. My dad decided to check my work. What we got here? Yeah, I'll take it. Good job, David. Let's look in the code book to check our span tables for all the lumber. Now I'm using all 2x8 lumber, and in my area, the lumber that you purchase is going to be spruce pine fir grade number 2. So let's look in the code book. First, we'll check out the floor joists. Now in my case, the floor joists have a clear span of 10 foot. All right, let's take a look at the span tables. This is the span table I'll be using for the floor joists. And if we come over here, we can see live load of 40 pounds per square foot. That's what I'll be using, with a deflection of L over 360. Again, that's my situation. And we could use the dead load of 10. So I'll be using 2x8s, but let's look at what we could use. Span of 12, I'm putting them 16 inches on center. We have spruce pine fir, grade number 2. So if we scroll over, we'll see that for the 2x8 column, we can span 12 foot 3 inches. Well, my clear span is 10 foot 0 inches. So this passes. And if we scrolled over and look at the dead load for 20 pounds per square foot, it also passes because that can span 11 foot 6 inches. And again, I have a 10 foot clear span. Now, what if I wanted to do 24 inches on center? Well, that's over here. Same thing, 2x8s, but we're going to be looking at 24 inches on center. Well, that's 10 foot 3 inches. So it would work for 10 pounds per square foot, and it would not work for 20 pounds per square foot dead load. So for me, I could get away with 24 inches on center, but it's right on the line. So I could do 24 inches on center as far as the floor joists are concerned, but let's keep going and look at the roof rafters. Now the rafters have a clear span of 129.5 inches or 10 foot 9.5 inches. So this is rafter spans, ground snow load is 30. Well, my area is 40 pounds per square foot snow load. So I actually have to jump up to the 50 pound per square foot snow load. And because we have solar panels on there, we're going to definitely want to use the heavier dead load calculation at 20 pounds per square foot. But this is L over 180, so that would be if you have an attic underneath. We want to use L over 240 because we have a ceiling attached. So it says right there, ceiling attached. So we have rafter span, 50 pound per square foot snow load, L over 240, dead load of 20 pounds per square foot. So this is the big column that we want. And if we look at our 2x8s and scroll down, and again over here, spruce pine fir number 2, so that can span 11 foot 5 inches. So that is good because ours is 10 foot 9 inches. So that passes. But let's see if we could do this with 24 inches on center. Well, over here, 24 inches on center, same things up top. It can span 9 foot 4 inches for the 24 inches on center. Well, because our span for the rafters is 10 foot 9.5 inches, then this just won't work. So 9 foot 4 inches does not pass. So as far as the rafters are concerned, we need either 16 inches on center for 2x8s, or we need, over here, we could bump up to a 2x10, and then it passes. So that's the choice that we have to make is, do we want to make it all with 2x8s and go 16 inches on center, or we could go 24 inches on center with 2x10s. But using the span tables allows us to make that decision. And for me, I'm going to go 16 inches on center with 2x8s for everything. The trusses for the off-grid cabin are done, and they look great. Now, would I do it again? Probably, but there was a learning curve to this. And there wasn't that kind of constant progression of seeing your progress. So when you build a platform, you can kind of see your progress every day as you go. With this setup, I feel like I spent a lot of time, like a week in between rainstorms, just cutting the lumber to all the lengths and then assembling it. And it, you know, the actual standing up only took about 5 hours total with the help of my dad, which huge shout out and thanks to him for coming out and helping me stand these trusses. They're very cumbersome. I'm not sure I could have done it as one person. I probably would have needed to rig up a rope and pulley to help me. But you know, there's probably a way, but it's a lot easier with just 2 people. So standing them up, you know, you kind of get this big oomph right at the end. But compared to platform framing, you can kind of see your progression as you go. You see the platform, then you see the walls, then you see the roof. So you get this constant satisfaction. So, you know, I liked it, but there was a learning curve. You know, there were certain things like the second truss that I built was the worst one that I did out of the whole system. And I learned that I had to screw each individual member in place before I gusseted it, because gusseting them kind of shifts the other end of the lumber just slightly. So the second one I had to kind of shim. So this worked out great. And one of the benefits here is that as it continues to rain, the rain can fall right through because we don't have a floor on it. We're not going to have any puddling water up against the framing material. So that's a benefit. And in the next video, we'll get a little bit more framing on the gable end walls and we'll get the thing sheathed in. Now, I'd love to hear from you guys out there. If you've ever tried building a truss frame before, what was your experience with it? And thank you everybody so much for watching. If you enjoy these videos, please like, subscribe, comment, and share.